Season 6 of The Chosen is officially done filming, and what's coming next is going to break your heart in ways this show never has before. This isn't just another chapter, it's the chapter. The final 24 hours before the crucifixion, the day darkness fell on humanity. The day hope was nearly extinguished. And from everything we now know, from behind-the-scenes details to the emotional toll on the cast, it's clear this season is going to leave every fan breathless. You think you're prepared? You're not. So, here's what makes Season 6 so different. It's set almost entirely over the course of a single day. Not just any day, but the last 24 hours of Jesus' life. Think about that for a second. All the teaching, the healing, the walking, the miracles, they're done. This time, it's the countdown to the cross. Director Dallas Jenkins has described this as the most emotionally intense season he's ever worked on. And it's not just him. Everyone involved says the atmosphere on set was unlike anything they've experienced before. Filming mostly took place at night, deliberately mirroring the emotional and spiritual darkness of Jesus' final moments. According to Jenkins, this wasn't just a creative decision, it was necessary to capture the suffocating tension that surrounded that day, the silence, the confusion, the despair. They filmed in almost complete darkness for weeks. The lighting, the sound, the pacing, it all reflects the stillness of those hours before Jesus was arrested. The pressure of getting that right. It weighed heavily on every single member of the crew. This time, they didn't just want to show what happened. They wanted the audience to feel it. And you can tell how seriously they took that mission just by the production schedule. Season 6 was filmed over 86 days, the longest shoot in The Chosen's history. That's nearly 3 weeks longer than any previous season. Locations included Texas, Utah, and Matera, Italy, the same place where they filmed the original crucifixion scenes. And there's something haunting about returning to that place again. Something that cast members described as surreal, almost sacred. Now, here's where things get personal. Jonathan Roumie, who plays Jesus, has always poured everything into the role, but this time, it broke him. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. He admitted this was the most difficult experience of his career. The overnight shoots, the cold, the weight of the crucifixion scenes. He lost weight, muscle, and at times, emotional control. This wasn't just acting anymore. This was carrying the weight of Christ's final sacrifice on his shoulders. Roumie confessed that there were moments he wasn't sure he could finish certain scenes. He had to go to places inside himself that he'd never touched before. Dark places, quiet places. And he said that at times, the only thing that got him through was prayer. Elizabeth Tabish, who plays Mary Magdalene, was just as affected. She talked about how hard it was to stand in those scenes where Jesus is mocked, beaten, and humiliated. Even though it's just acting. She said, "You're watching someone you love be tortured. And it's awful." For her, those moments blurred the lines between performance and real pain. It wasn't just Mary Magdalene breaking on screen, it was Elizabeth herself. And then there's Yoshi Barrigas, who plays Philip, and Abe Buena-Jalad, who plays Big James. Even cast members who weren't required on set came. Anyway, just to witness the gravity of what was being filmed. Abe said, "I've never seen the cast so focused. There's just been incredible stuff happening. I've watched scenes that gave me goosebumps, that kind of energy. It doesn't happen on every production." This was something deeper, something sacred. But The Chosen isn't stopping at emotional depth. They're also reinventing how this story reaches us. Just like they've done with every season, they're changing the game again. This time, Season 6 will release first on Prime Video in 2026. But here's the twist. The finale, which includes the crucifixion, will be released as a full-length feature film in theaters on May 12, 2027. Yes, The Chosen is becoming cinematic history. And the theatrical experience is going to take the heartbreak and power of this season to a completely different level. Imagine sitting in a dark room watching the final hours of Jesus unfold on a massive screen, surrounded by silence. No escape. Just the weight of that moment. It's not just a finale, it's an event, and they're not stopping there. Season 7, which will depict the resurrection, is also heading to theaters, with a feature-length premiere on March 31st, 2028. That means we're not just watching a show anymore. We're part of a movement, a storytelling experience unlike anything television has ever done. And let's be real for a second. Who would have imagined that The Chosen, which began as a crowdfunded series, would end up partnered with Amazon MGM Studios and releasing full-blown movies in theaters around the world? Abe Buena-Jalad summed it up perfectly. We've always been about doing things differently. This is who we are. And that spirit of defying expectations, of pushing boundaries, of embracing discomfort is exactly why season 6 is going to hit harder than anything before. Because this is the end of the beginning, and the beginning of everything that matters. What's striking about season 6 isn't just the scale of the production or the fact that it covers the final day before the crucifixion, it's what this season did to the people involved. Because when you hear the cast talk about it, you start to realize this wasn't just about making a TV show, it was about walking through suffering. Together, Jonathan Roumie, the face of Jesus to millions of viewers around the world, didn't hide the toll it took. By the time filming wrapped, he was physically exhausted. The grueling overnight shoots drained his body, he was losing weight rapidly, and he admitted that portraying Christ's agony, especially the betrayal, the isolation, the brutality left a mark on his soul. He said there were days he would leave the set and just sit in silence, not able to speak to anyone, because he was still in that moment, still carrying that pain. And when you think about it, how could he not be? This isn't fictional heartbreak. This is the heartbreak. The betrayal in Gethsemane, the trial, the silence of the crowd, the whip, the thorns, the cross, and even though it's a reenactment, the emotional weight is real. Jonathan said that playing Jesus in these final hours forced him to confront things in himself he didn't expect: his own fears, doubts, and helplessness. In a way, he wasn't just portraying Jesus, he was suffering with him. And he wasn't alone. Elizabeth Tabbit, who has delivered one of the most nuanced and heartfelt portrayals of Mary Magdalene across the series, said she had never experienced anything like this. There's a moment in the crucifixion sequence where Mary is just standing there, watching, powerless. And Elizabeth said, "I felt it in my bones, the pain, the helplessness, the horror. It shook her in ways she didn't see coming." There were days she left set sobbing. Even with the cameras off, the grief lingered. And maybe that's what makes The Chosen different. The cast doesn't just act, they live the story. They feel it. Jordan Walker Ross, who plays Little James, described the filming environment as heavy but sacred. He said there were moments during shooting when no one spoke between takes. Not out of tiredness, but out of reverence. Because when you're standing in the middle of a crucifixion scene, when you see your friend hanging, they're bloodied, bruised, broken, it's hard to just shake it off and grab coffee like it's a normal workday. Even cast members who didn't have major scenes in the crucifixion arc found themselves changed. Abe Buenajalid, who plays Big James, said he would show up on his days off just to watch what was happening. And he didn't. Go out of curiosity. He went because something real was unfolding in front of the cameras. Something so powerful it gave him chills. He described one particular moment, though he didn't say what, that made him walk away. Just to cry alone. And this is where the emotional impact of season 6 truly hits fans. Because if they, the people who know it's fiction, who were there when the cameras cut, who saw the props and the script and the production trailers, if they were undone by it, what is it going to do to us? We only see the finished version, the polish, the edit, the music, but behind every frame is someone who poured out their pain to bring this story to life. And that pain isn't fake. It's not manufactured emotion. It's real. You'll feel it when Mary screams in silence, when Peter hangs his head, when John stands alone, when Jesus is lifted up and the screen goes quiet. And in those moments, you won't be watching actors anymore. You'll feel like you're there in the crowd, watching your friends suffer, unable to stop it. And that's why Dallas Jenkins pushed for authenticity like never before. He didn't want this to be just another retelling. He wanted this season to be felt. He insisted on darkness, on silence, on discomfort. He refused to sanitize what happened. And he's made it clear this is going to be raw. That's part of why the filming was so difficult. It wasn't about budget or logistics, it was emotional warfare. Dallas said there were days where crew members had to take breaks not because of the physical work, but because the weight of the story became too much. People wept on set. They prayed, they hugged. They sat quietly in corners just to catch their breath. It became a sacred space, not just a set, but something deeper. And you can tell how much this season means to the people behind it by how they talk about the story. They don't talk in terms of scenes or scripts. They talk in terms of grief, loss, love, and purpose. One crew member reportedly said, "I came in thinking I was helping make a show. I'm leaving changed." And maybe that's the legacy of season 6. It's not just about delivering a dramatic climax. It's about what that climax does to us. Because if watching Jesus walk toward the cross doesn't shake you, doesn't open something inside you, then maybe you weren't really watching. This isn't just the conclusion of a season. It's the heartbreak of humanity captured in slow motion. By now, we know season 6 of The Chosen is built around a single day. But what many people don't realize is that nearly the entire season takes place at night. That's right, most of what you'll see this season unfolds under cover of darkness. And this wasn't just a stylistic decision. This was deeply intentional. Because this is the darkest day in human history, director Dallas Jenkins explained that the night setting was used to mimic the emotional and spiritual weight of the story. From the Last Supper to Gethsemane, from betrayal to trial, these moments didn't happen in daylight. They happened while the world slept, unaware of the storm about to break. And the production leaned fully into that idea. Shooting overnight wasn't just a logistical nightmare. It was draining physically, mentally, emotionally. Cast and crew flipped their schedules, filming through the night and sleeping through the day for weeks on end. And while that might sound like just another industry sacrifice, the result was something real. The fatigue on the actors' faces, that's not makeup. That's not acting. That's real exhaustion, real pain, real sorrow. Jonathan Roumie said. The overnight shoots began to take a toll on him faster than he expected. Sleep deprivation combined with the emotional intensity of the crucifixion scenes pushed him to a breaking point. He said there were moments he felt completely detached from reality. Not in a dangerous way, but in a spiritual one. Like time was bending. Like the past and the present were colliding. And that's exactly the point. Because The Chosen isn't trying to simply retell the gospel, it's trying to pull you into it. To make you forget you're watching a show. To make you feel like you're walking alongside the disciples, waiting, weeping, wondering what just went wrong. And that sense of disorientation, of tension building in the darkness, is everywhere. In season 6, the characters are constantly in motion, but also stuck. There's an urgency in their movements, but also confusion, fear, silence. And that silence, it's deafening. Dallas Jenkins spoke about how much time they spent getting the quiet parts, right? Long pauses, empty spaces, looks that last just a second too long. He said the goal was not to rush to the crucifixion, but to sit in the moments that led up to it, because that's where the heartbreak really is. Not just in the nails, but in the goodbyes. Think about Peter. He's always been passionate, bold, eager to defend Jesus at any cost. But in this season, we'll see him crumble. We'll see him make promises with fire in his chest and break them hours later. We'll see him run, and for the first time, Peter's bravado is replaced by Brokeness. Then there's Judas. Yes, Judas is in this season, and his arc is as devastating as you'd imagine. What makes it worse is how human he is. He doesn't come across as a villain with evil in his eyes. No, he's confused, torn. He thinks he's doing what's right. And that's what makes it all so tragic. Watching his descent isn't horrifying. Because you want to reach into the screen and stop him. You want to say, don't do it. It's not too late. But you can't. And neither can anyone else. One cast member said the scenes with Judas were some of the hardest to shoot, not because of violence or drama, but because of the sadness. The deep, unshakable sadness that comes from betrayal. Not just any betrayal, but one that feels inevitable. And if that wasn't enough, let's talk about the setting itself. Much of season 6 was shot in Matera, Italy, a city that feels like it was carved out of time itself. It's the same city where The Passion of the Christ was filmed, and it carries that weight, that memory. Bueno Jalad said returning to that place felt holy and heavy. He described walking through the narrow, ancient streets where Jesus would take his final steps and feeling a kind of pressure in his chest. Like the stones themselves remembered what happened there, and that atmosphere bled into every frame. This wasn't a bright, polished version of Jesus' final day. This was raw, earthy, cold. There's dust in the air, blood on the stones, breath hanging in the darkness. And when the cast stepped into those scenes, they weren't pretending. They were reliving, even off camera. The weight didn't lift. One of the assistant directors reportedly said that people on set would whisper rather than talk because it didn't feel right to be loud. There was reverence in every movement, a kind of sacred tension that never really broke. But perhaps the most haunting detail is this. The crucifixion sequence was shot over multiple days. Not one long scene, not a rushed finale, multiple days of blood, sweat, tears, and silence. And Jonathan Roumie was at the center of it all, bound, bruised, exhausted, but focused. He said those days blurred together, not because of the shoot, but because of what he was experiencing internally. He spoke of going to places in his faith that he never expected. He talked about prayers that became cries, about moments when he didn't even need direction because the emotion poured out of him naturally. It was that intense. And it wasn't just hard on him. The entire crew felt it. One member of the lighting team said they'd never cried behind the camera before, until now. A production assistant shared that they stopped watching the monitors and just stood there, hand over their mouth, unable to process what they were seeing. And multiple people said the same thing. It didn't feel like a scene anymore. It felt like it was really happening. That's the power of season 6. It traps you in the night and doesn't let you out. It holds your hand and walks you through pain, through fear, through silence. It doesn't spare your heart, it breaks it. But it does so with purpose, because the night doesn't last forever. Even in the darkest hour, a whisper of dawn remains. If you've followed The Chosen from the very beginning, you already know it's never been a typical series. From its grassroots beginnings to its global fan base, it has always broken the rules about faith-based storytelling, about independent production, and about what a TV show can actually become. But season 6, this is where everything changes. Not just for the characters, not just for the fans, but for the future of The Chosen itself. Because this season isn't just setting up a finale is the finale. The Crucifixion isn't just a plot twist, it's the core of the story. And the way this season handles it will leave an emotional crater. This is the final breaking point for every character we've come to love. Every relationship, every promise, every bit of hope hangs by a thread. And as we've seen, that heartbreak isn't just on the screen. It's behind the scenes, too. Dallas Jenkins has said more than once that this is the hardest thing he's ever created. Not just because of the size of the production, but because of the responsibility. He knows what this moment means. Not just theologically, but emotionally, spiritually, personally. He said season 6 wasn't about impressing viewers. It was about honoring the most important moment in human history. And to do that, he took a huge risk. Instead of delivering a fast-paced, action-packed season, Dallas slowed everything down. This isn't a sprint to the cross, it's a slow, steady descent into sorrow. The pacing is deliberate, measured, there's space to breathe, to cry, to pray. And that's what makes it so brutal. Because it gives you time to sit with the pain, to feel the weight of every word, every betrayal, every goodbye, Peter's collapse, Judas's choice, Mary's heartbreak, John's silence, Matthew's confusion, Thomas's fear. It's all laid bare. We watch them fall apart in real time, and perhaps the most heart-wrenching thing is they don't know what we know. We, as the audience, understand the ending. We know the resurrection is coming, but they don't, and The Chosen doesn't cheat that moment. It doesn't give the characters hints or comfort. It lets them grieve fully, deeply. That's why the performances this season are so raw. Brandon Potter, who plays Quintus, reportedly said in a cast meeting that this season blurred the line between actor and character more than ever. The emotions you see, they aren't manufactured, they're real. And that honesty bleeds through the screen. One cast member even said they had nightmares after filming. Not from fear, but from sorrow. From the overwhelming grief of walking through these scenes day after day. For some, it took weeks to emotionally recover after filming wrapped. And yet, that's exactly why this season matters. Because it doesn't protect you from the pain. It walks you into it. But The Chosen isn't just about retelling the passion story, it's about reimagining how we experience it. That's why, for the first time in the show's history, the finale will not debut online. Instead, it will hit theaters as a full-length feature film on May 12, 2027. That's not just a release date, it's a statement. This is no longer just a show, it's a movement. Abe Jalad, who has become one of the most vocal ambassadors for the cast, said this new direction is something they all believe in deeply. We're not just filming TV anymore, he said. We're telling the greatest story ever told. And we're telling it like it's never been told before. The deal with Amazon MGM Studios reflects that vision. This isn't about money or fame, it's about reach. It's about taking the story of Jesus to theaters around the world. And doing it in a way that feels cinematic, personal, and powerful. Fact. The decision to turn the season 6 finale into a theatrical release has caused a major shift in how The Chosen is structured moving forward. Season 7 will also begin with a theatrical event, a feature-length film depicting the resurrection. Slated for March 31st, 2028. Yes, The Chosen is going big. But more importantly, it's going deep. Because the Crucifixion can't just be something you watch on your phone during a lunch break. It deserves more. And Dallas Jenkins knows that. He wants this moment to be experienced in silence, in darkness, with your breath caught in your chest, surrounded by others who are feeling the same heartbreak at the same time. This isn't just content. It's communion. And for fans who've been watching from day one, this feels like the natural end of a journey that began in a quiet stable and now ends on a brutal hill. But if you think it's only about the pain, think again. Because in that heartbreak, in that darkness, in that silence, something begins to stir. And that is the brilliance of Season 6. It brings you all the way down into despair, into sorrow, into silence, so that the light that's coming next will mean something. It earns the resurrection by showing us the full cost of the cross and the impact this will have on fans. It's already happening. Social media is filled with early responses from insiders and crew members who've said Season 6 made them cry in ways they didn't expect. Not just once, but over and over. People are saying they'll never see the Crucifixion the same way again. That this version has brought it to life in a way that feels personal, and that's the point. Because Season 6 isn't just the end of Jesus' ministry, it's the end of comfort, the end of assumptions, the end of distance. It's a season that grabs your heart and doesn't let go. If Season 6 is the heartbreak, Season 7 will be the healing. But don't expect a quick fix. The Chosen doesn't rush emotions, and it doesn't skip over pain. The aftermath of the Crucifixion will not be a gentle fade into hope. It will be raw, staggering, and slow. And that's what makes it powerful. Because this story, more than any other, teaches us that the light is only meaningful after we've walked through the dark. But let's pause for a moment and really reflect on what we've just been through as viewers and what the characters are about to face. Jesus is gone. The disciples are shattered. Everything they thought they knew has crumbled. Their teacher, their leader, their friend executed like a criminal. And they don't understand why. That silence after death, it's not peaceful. It's suffocating. And that's exactly where Season 6 leaves us. Because The Chosen wants us to feel what the disciples felt. Abandonment, confusion, fear, doubt. The series doesn't just ask us to watch, it asks us to live it. And that's why this season will stick with fans long after the credits roll. It hurts because it's supposed to. Because the cross wasn't clean or safe. It was devastating. And yet, within that devastation, a seed is planted. One that doesn't bloom right away. But it will. Dallas Jenkins has always said that The Chosen is ultimately a story about transformation. And Season 6 is the crucible for that transformation. Every character is broken by the end of this season. Peter's faith fails. Judas is gone. Mary is paralyzed by grief. The group is scattered. But beneath all that, there's a flicker of something else. Not quite hope. Not yet. But something deeper. A pull, a whisper, a promise. And that promise, it's what Season 7 will be built upon. Because when The Chosen returns, it won't start with celebration. It will begin in grief, in disbelief, in hiding. But slowly, painfully, that grief will turn. That silence will break. And what rises from the ashes will not just be faith renewed. It will be faith reborn. The decision to begin Season 7 with a theatrical film depicting the resurrection slated for March 31st, 2080 is no accident. It's a mirror. Season 6 ends in darkness. Season 7 begins with light. It's a full circle moment. And Dallas Jenkins has hinted that the resurrection sequence will be unlike anything we've seen in the series so far. Not because of visual effects, but because of what it means. Imagine sitting in a theater, just as you did for the Crucifixion finale in 2027. The room is quiet, then the stone rolls, the silence breaks, and the impossible becomes real. That's not just a show, that's a sacred experience. But even before we get there, there's something fans are already realizing. The Chosen has changed the way we connect. With this story, it's no longer a distant tale told through stained glass or dusty pages. It's alive, it breathes, it cries, it bleeds. And Season 6 is the heart of that transformation. You can feel it in every quote from the cast, in every word from the crew, in every behind-the-scenes post where someone says, "I'll never be the same again." This isn't PR talk. These are people who've been moved, who've been wrecked by the story they helped bring to life. People like Abe Buenajalad, who wasn't even in Season 1 but has now become a cornerstone of the cast, said that working on this season forced him to read deeper, reflect harder, and ask questions he'd never asked before. And he's not the only one. Cast members have shared stories of personal transformation, of how portraying grief, faith, and sacrifice changed them, and that transformation has spread. It's happening in the fandom. Go online and you'll see it. Long threads of people processing what they've seen, fans sharing how the betrayal of Judas left them shaken, how Peter's failure made them cry, how Mary's silence was louder than any scream. People aren't just watching season 6, they're carrying it. Because this season doesn't end when the credits roll. It lingers. It echoes. It follows you home. And maybe that's the greatest achievement of all. Because The Chosen has never been about spectacle, it's about substance, about connection, about truth. And in season 6, that truth is simple but devastating. Love is costly. Forgiveness is brutal. Redemption demands everything. But in the very moment when it seems like all is lost, that's when the story begins to turn. Because behind the darkness of the cross, dawn is coming. So hold on. Let your heart break. Let the silence press in. Let the grief do its work. Because in a little while, the stone will roll away and everything will change.